I've served aboard 3 submarines in my career, 2 fast attack boats and 1 ballistic missile platform, but nothing ever felt like the USS Kestrel. It wasn't her size or her layout. Plenty of steel tubes in the fleet share the same cramped corridors and recycled air. What made the Kestrel different was what she was built for. Every man on board knew, even if it was never said out loud, that this boat existed to go places the Navy wasn't supposed to send people. Officially, she was a modified fast attack submarine configured for deep ocean retrieval operations. Unofficially, she was something between an experimental weapon and a test of how far you can push human beings into places the planet clearly didn't design for us. Her hull plating had been thickened beyond standard spec, layered with experimental composites that made the engineers brag and the rest of us quietly nervous. The ballast control systems were redesigned to allow more aggressive depth changes. The sonar array was new, sensitive enough to pick up a school of fish sneezing 3 miles away, or so the techs claimed. On paper, she looked like a prototype proudly presented to a committee. In reality, she felt like a haunted machine, too quiet, too capable, and carrying a mission profile that never matched the words routine patrol. The briefing came at 0300, because of course it did. We were already underway, engines humming deep in the hull, the ocean slipping past above us. Commander Ellis called the department heads and key staff into the control room. He didn't have to raise his voice or slam a fist on the table to get attention. That wasn't his style. Ellis was lean, sharp-edged, and economical with everything: words, movement, emotion. When he walked to the digital chart table and tapped the screen, the room went silent because we all knew that when Ellis talked, what he said mattered. "We've been reassigned," he said, in that calm, clipped tone that made simple sentences sound like sealed. "Orders. Last-minute redirect from above. We are now proceeding to the western edge of the Mariana Trench. Civilian seismic monitors in the area lost contact 36 hours ago." He zoomed the map in, and the screen filled with blue emptiness. Then a cluster of red circles appeared near the trench, pulsing faintly. "Our tasking is simple," he continued. "We descend, locate the arrays, recover what we can, and return to depth-safe waters. 40-hour mission profile, in and out. Low risk." He said low risk with such casual certainty that if I hadn't been in the Navy long enough, I might have believed him. But I saw the tiny tells. Chief Ramirez, our sonar chief, shifted his stance just enough to cross his arms tighter. Petty Officer Bishop, our weapons tech and one of the youngest in the room, swallowed like he'd just tasted something bitter. Dr. Lena Ward, the civilian oceanographer who had boarded that morning with a stack of classified papers and a composure that belonged more in a lab than on a combat submarine, tilted her head slightly as if she'd heard a joke no one else caught. She was too smart not to see the gaps. Civilian seismic monitors don't just go offline and stay that way for 36 hours in one of the most sensitive ocean regions on the planet. You don't send an experimental, deep-capable submarine on a power flush and equipment recovery run unless something about that silence bothers people far above your pay grade. Ellis finished the briefing with the usual procedural notes, the kind designed to put structure over uncertainty: watch rotations, depth milestones, estimated time on station, standard phrases that made this sound like any other run. When he dismissed us with a final prepare for dive, no one argued. No one asked the question hanging in the air: why us and why here? I took my position on the command deck as we began the descent, the familiar ritual unfolding around me. Ballast tanks flooded with a low, steady roar. The bow dipped, and gravity shifted just enough for us to feel the angle in our knees. The surface light faded quickly through the periscope, turning from a glittering silver wash to dull, distant gray, and then to nothing at all. The ocean swallowed daylight with an efficiency that always felt a little personal, like it resented the intrusion. At 2,000 feet, the first creaks began, a gentle protest from the hull, like an old ship's bones settling. At 5,000, those creaks deepened into long, slow groans, the kind of sounds that made new sailors glance nervously at the pressure gauges even though they were well within safe range. By 12,000 feet, the temperature inside had dropped noticeably, despite environmental controls, and the walls radiated a faint, steady cold that seeped into your hands if you leaned on the bulkheads too long. There's something about being that deep that the systems can't quite insulate you from. You feel the weight of water even if the numbers say you're fine. It wasn't until we crossed 18,000 feet that the easy rhythm of a controlled descent started to fracture. I noticed it in Ramirez first. He leaned in toward his sonar console, frowning, his fingers moving over controls with the kind of care that meant he wasn't just doing routine checks. He was trying to confirm something he didn't like. I stepped closer. "You picking something up, Chief?" I asked. He didn't answer immediately. He adjusted the gain, filtered noise, ran a quick sweep. The green lines on his display shifted, then settled. Only then did he speak, without looking at me. "Got something at bearing 310, he murmured. "Range unknown. It's moving." "Submerged contact?" I asked. "Could be another vessel." He shook his head once. "No regular profile, no prop wash, not bouncing back like a boat." "Then what is it?" He hesitated, and that worried me more than anything. "Vector path is too clean and too steady for debris," he said. "And the way it's adjusting position." He exhaled slowly. "Feels intentional." The word hung between us like a bad smell. At that moment it was just a word, a label for a pattern of movement that didn't fit the usual models. Later that word would feel like the first loose stone in a landslide. We slowed our descent slightly to refine the contact, but whatever it was didn't behave like anything we knew. It swept around our flank, dipped below, rose again, then hung just outside a clear target range. There were no undersea mountains here, no chasms to hide a second vessel. According to our charts, we were descending along a relatively open slope. Currents at this depth weren't strong enough to push a solid object around like that. The water should have been nearly still, and yet something out there was pacing us. Dr. Ward drifted into Sonar like a magnet pulled her. "Is that the anomaly?" she asked. Ramirez didn't take his eyes off the display. "If it is, I want it to go be anomalous somewhere else." "Marine life?" she suggested, but there was skepticism threaded through her voice. She knew the known ranges as well as we did. "Not at this depth," Ramirez replied quietly, "and nothing down here moves like it's running drills." Before we could speculate further, the sonar emitted a sharp, unfamiliar chirp, a warning tone I hadn't heard in my entire career. It cut through the background, noise like a blade. Ramirez stiffened. "What's that?" I asked. "New auto alert they tied into the system," he said tightly. "It only trips when an object of significant size enters our sweep zone at a speed the software can't classify. It doesn't know if it's a threat, but it's scared." "Size estimate?" He worked the controls fast, chasing a ghost across the screen. "Still calibrating, but based on displacement spikes?" He swallowed. "Bigger than anything we've recorded on a deep-sea profile. Way bigger than a whale. Whatever's out there is huge." The control room went quiet. We all knew the deepest. Confirmed creatures weren't exactly small, but they weren't that big. Not comparable to a submarine big. Not this could hurt us big. Commander Ellis appeared behind us as if conjured. He had that talent. Moving silently and only speaking when he already knew enough. "Status?" he asked. "Unknown contact, sir," Ramirez said. "Bearing 310, large displacement, non-standard profile." "Hostile?" Ellis asked. "We don't have that classification," Ramirez replied. "It's just there, and it's moving like it knows we're here." Ellis studied the display for a long moment, then straightened. "Maintain descent," he said. "We were sent here for a reason. We don't abort just because the ocean decided to get interesting." I almost argued. I wanted to point out that interesting in the Mariana Trench wasn't a good thing, but Ellis had that tone that meant the decision was already settled in his head. I knew when not to push. We continued down. At 21,000 feet, the contact vanished. It didn't fade, didn't slide off screen like something drifting away. One sweep it was there. The next, nothing. The sonar image returned to normal background grain with a flat finality that made the hair stand up on the back of my neck. A creature that size doesn't just disappear from a system that can track fish scales miles away. You don't lose something like that unless it chooses to be lost. We held at depth for a few minutes and swept the area, but there was nothing. No echoes, no returns, just cold silence. Finally, Ellis ordered us to continue the descent. I watched Ramirez, and the way he clenched his jaw told me he didn't like it any more than I did. At 23,000 feet, the Kestrel started to feel less like a war machine and more like a coffin. The metal around us complained in long, low groans as the pressure climbed. Every creak made some part of your brain imagine buckling seams and sudden floods. It's the price of going where sunlight never has. You learn to live with that noise. This time, though, I found myself counting each creak, waiting for one that didn't sound like the others. We didn't have to wait long. The first real contact wasn't on sonar. It was physical. It began as a shudder, subtle, like distant turbulence. Then, in a single instant, something scraped along our starboard side with enough force to send a vibration through the entire hull. It wasn't the blunt thud of debris. It was a long, drawn-out drag, metal on metal, like we were being raked by something hard and deliberate. "Impact, starboard side," I said, gripping the console as the deck trembled under my boots. Ramirez's eyes flicked to his screen. "No new contact," he muttered. Nothing showing. Whatever hit us isn't bouncing a damn thing back. Did we clip a ridge? Bishop asked, voice thin. There are no ridges on this slope, I answered. We shouldn't be touching anything. The hull groaned louder, a high, straining pitch that made my teeth ache. For a second, I imagined something huge gliding along our flank, testing us with one extended limb. The lights flickered, timing their blink with our collective pulse. When they came back steady, the control room felt smaller. We're holding depth, I reported. No breach indicators, no pressure anomalies. Ellis nodded once. We proceed. No one cheered. No one cracked a joke. The humor that keeps crews sane on long deployments had packed up and left the moment something unseen touched our ship. We crossed 27,000 feet, and the water outside might as well have been solid rock for how oppressive it felt. Every foot downward added another layer of something heavy and ancient pressing in on us. You don't think about the surface anymore at that depth. It feels like a rumor. Then the second strike hit. This one didn't feel like a brush. It felt like a punch. Something slammed into the port side at an angle, and the entire sub lurched. We heeled over a few degrees, and Bishop went sprawling. Across the deck with a startled shout, the lights snapped to red emergency mode, bathing everything in blood-colored pulses. Warning alarms exploded across the instrument panels, a chaotic chorus of different tones all screaming the same message. Something was very wrong. What the hell was that? Bishop shouted, scrambling back to his station. Portside impact, I said. Significant force. No internal breach yet. The sound that followed was worse than the hit itself. A prolonged scraping, deep and guttural, traveling along the hull from bow toward midships. It sounded like claws dragging down the length of the submarine, testing the skin, searching for weakness. You could feel the vibration through the deck plates, through the rails, through your bones. Dr. Ward's composure cracked then. That is not geological activity, she said, eyes wide. That isn't shifting sediment or rockfall. That's contact. That's tactile. Like it's grabbing us, Bishop whispered. The hull screamed in response, a long, wailing groan that barely sounded mechanical. For a moment it felt like the Kestrel was in the grip of something alive, something tightening slowly just to see how much we could take. Our pitch changed abruptly as the sub tried to roll. Not a controlled maneuver, not ballast adjusting. Something outside was applying uneven force, as if it was trying to tip us onto our side. Compasses twitched, loose equipment rattled. Men grabbed whatever they could brace against. Compensate with ballast, I barked. Counter-roll now. The pumps roared to life, dumping and shifting water as fast as the systems allowed. The angle stabilized, but I could still feel that alien pressure against us, a stubborn resistance that made us feel like a toy in the hands of something far heavier and far more curious. For 3 long seconds we hung there, caught between our systems fighting to keep us upright and an external force trying to see if it could flip us. Then abruptly, the pressure released. The sub righted, the hull's scream faded into normal creaks, and the alarms began clearing one by one. We were left in a ringing, artificial quiet, the kind that comes after an explosion. Everyone looked at everyone else, as if hoping someone had a rational explanation ready. Status, Ellis said, voice flat. Structural integrity nominal, I reported. No breaches. Minor stress spikes on port plating, but within survivable margins. Sonar? Ellis asked. Ramirez shook his head. Nothing, he said. It's like it was never there. Dr. Ward swallowed, her throat working visibly. It hit us twice with enough force to jar an experimental submarine, she said. It tried to roll us. You don't get that kind of intentional contact from any known deep-sea life form. Ellis looked at her, then at me, then at the displays. We are not retreating, he said. We were sent to that trench because something down here changed. The only way out is through. We continue. It was the kind of line that would have sounded heroic in a movie. Down here, it just sounded like inevitability. We pushed further down. The numbers ticked past 28,000 feet. The hull's complaints grew constant, a heavy throbbing chorus of metal under strain. Air felt thinner even though the oxygen mix hadn't changed. Everyone breathed a little more carefully. No one said the word crush, depth out loud, but it sat in the back of every mind like a loaded gun. At 29,000 feet, our mysterious companion returned. This time there was no ambiguity. The sonar display flared with a massive displacement spike above us so large it briefly overloaded the scale. Ramirez cursed under his breath. It's right on top of us, he said. Vertical approach. Fast. Distance? I snapped. Closing. Very fast. 10 seconds to contact. Maybe less. I didn't have time to respond before it hit. The impact from above was brutal, a downward slam that drove the Kestrel several degrees deeper in an instant. It was like being punched by the ocean itself. Consoles rattled. A few overhead fixtures broke loose and crashed to the deck. Men shouted, grabbing whatever they could to keep from being thrown. Then the lights went out. Darkness swallowed us, total and absolute. For a heartbeat, there was nothing but the echo of the impact and the sudden, suffocating awareness of just how deep we really were. Then faint red emergency strips kicked in along the floor and panel edges, casting the control room in a dim, hellish glow. Above us, on the outer hull, something began to move. The sounds came first, a slow, heavy dragging from bow to stern, right over our heads. It wasn't the chaotic grind of collapsing rock or shifting wreckage. It was rhythmic, deliberate, like something was crawling along the spine of the submarine, limb by limb, anchoring itself as it went. Every scrape vibrated through the structure, resonating in the air and in our chests. I felt the hair along my arms stand up. The pressure, the depth, the silence of the trench, all of it faded behind a single colder realization. We weren't alone down here, and whatever had found us was not just big, it was hunting. The sound of that thing moving along our hull carved itself into my memory in a way that gunfire and explosions never did. I've been shot at, rocketed, depth-charged by training exercises gone wrong, but nothing ever reached inside my head, like the slow, dragging rhythm that pulsed above us now. It was too measured, too careful. Rockfalls don't pause between movements. Debris doesn't reposition itself. This did. For a moment no one spoke. You could feel the whole control room listening, every man holding his breath just enough that the only sounds were the faint hum of life support systems and the scraping above us. The Kestrel had become something small and soft clenched between whatever passed for fingers out there. Commander Ellis was the first to move. He turned toward Ramirez, his face lit in thin red. From the emergency strips, his eyes looking almost black. "Sonar," he said, "talk to me." Ramirez tore his gaze away from the ceiling and checked his darkened console. Backup power had brought it back in a limited mode. Most displays were dim, but functional. "Still nothing," he said. "No return. Whatever's on us is either absorbing the ping or it's so close the system reads it as part of our own hull." "That's not possible," Bishop muttered. "Neither is something playing. Drums on the roof at 29,000 feet. Ramirez snapped back, more sharply than usual. I checked my boards. Main power hadn't completely failed, but our distribution had taken a hit. Some circuits had tripped under the strain. Environmental was running on redundant pathways. Ballast control was alive but sluggish, like it was fighting resistance in the lines. Depth was holding, but that wasn't comforting. If anything, it meant whatever had landed on us was heavier than buoyancy alone could counter. Dr. Ward's eyes were bright, but not with excitement. It was something closer to horrified fascination. "It's using us like a surface," she said quietly, "like a rock outcropping. It's clinging on. Can it breach us?" Bishop whispered. I didn't want to answer. The numbers said no. Our hull was rated well beyond this depth, stress margins tight but stable. But numbers don't account for unknowns. The sound of those scrapes, it didn't feel like something trying to test our hardness. It felt like something trying to understand our shape. "Status on external cameras?" Ellis asked. I checked, then shook my head. Dead. Pressure in the last hit took them out. "We're blind outside. Navigation, functional. Inertial and internal system steady. But we're being held in place. Our vertical trim is -2 degrees and ballast isn't changing that. Something on top is adding weight. So it's riding us," Ramirez said, "like a parasite." We all heard the next sound at once, a heavy, localized thump. Somewhere above compartment Bravo, followed by a different kind of vibration. Short, sharp pulses, as if something dense and heavy was tapping against the hull. The pattern wasn't random. It came in sets of 3, paused, then repeated. Tap, tap, tap. Silence. Tap, tap, tap. Bishop stared up. "Is it knocking?" "No," Ward said. "Animals don't knock. They probe." Ellis made his decision then. You could see it settle in his shoulders. "We are not staying here as a static target," he said. "If it's using us as a rest stop, we shake it off. Hail, prep emergency ascent parameters. Controlled, not panicked. I want us rising, not exploding. Ramirez, keep sweeping. If that thing pulls away, I want to know before it decides to come back from a better angle." "What about weapons?" Bishop asked. "We've got external countermeasures. We can jettison something, give it a taste of live ordnance, and risk rupturing our own hull at this depth?" Ellis replied. "We're not in a training exercise. One bad blast and we're paced. No, we move. That's how we survive." He wasn't wrong. The idea of detonating anything outside, with pressure already trying to kill us from every direction, made my stomach twist. I rerouted power from non-essential systems to ballast and maneuvering, watching the board light up with caution flags. "Emergency ascent ready," I said. "We can't go full blow. Hull can't take the delta at this depth, but I can force a strong upward vector. If whatever's on us doesn't want to go along for the ride, it might let go. And if it does want to go along, Ramirez asked, then we'll figure out how to deal with a hitchhiker closer to the surface, Ellis said. Do it, Lieutenant. I keyed in the command. Valves shifted. Pumps howled, sucking in and pushing out water in a coordinated surge that made the Kestrel shiver from bow to stern. Our vertical speed indicator edged upward, then stopped. It climbed again, sluggish, like pushing into syrup. We're moving, I said, more to myself than anyone. Outside, the scraping intensified. The thing on our hull felt the change in motion, and it didn't like it. The dragging grew harsher, more aggressive, with sudden jerks that rattled the internal structure. I imagined limbs tightening, some alien body flattening itself harder against our form to keep purchase. We're increasing ascent rate, I reported, but something is trying to hold us down. How the hell is it strong enough to do that? Bishop demanded. The same way it's big enough to sit on us like a folding chair, Ramirez said. Physics down here plays by different rules. Ward shook her head. Physics doesn't change, she said. Only our expectations do. The hull let out another drawn-out wail. Then something changed. The rhythm above us stuttered. One of the heavier scrapes broke into a series of shorter, lighter contacts, like whatever was up there had lost footing, or whatever passed for footing. Our ascent rate ticked higher, 3 feet per second, 5, 7. Come on, I whispered. Come on, come on. Suddenly the pressure above us vanished. It wasn't gradual. One heartbeat, the hull vibrated under thousands of pounds of something clinging to it. The next, it was just us and the crushing weight of the ocean again. The difference was so stark that everyone felt the internal lurch as the sub surged free, unburdened. Contact lost, Ramirez barked. Nothing on the hull, nothing on sonar. We shook it, I said. Relief ran through me, sharp and fleeting. We're clear. Maintain ascent, Ellis ordered. Controlled increase. I want us up and away from this depth band. We climbed, slow by human standards, but dangerously fast for a steel tube not designed to be a yo-yo. The artificial horizon on the display steadied. Gauges eased slightly. I could feel some tension bleed out of the air in the control room, replaced with a thin, exhausted aftertaste of adrenaline. Bishop exhaled a shaky laugh. We just got body slammed by a sea. Monster at the bottom of the ocean, he said. You realize no one is ever going to believe this, right? Good, Ellis said flatly. That's above all our pay grades to explain. We focus on survival. Speculation is for the people who read our reports and never leave their offices. We continued rising through 27,000, then 26. Systems normalized. Some of the red triangles on my display faded to yellow, then green, as circuits cooled and stabilized. Environmental levels smoothed out. If the situation hadn't been so insane, it almost could have passed for a successful maneuver. Then the temperature dropped. It wasn't subtle. One moment, the ambient readouts showed a standard internal range. The next, the numbers dipped 3 degrees. Then 5. Air that had been merely cool became distinctly cold. My breath fogged faintly in front of my face, thin tendrils of vapor curling in the red light. Environmental? I asked. Systems report nominal, said the petty officer at life support. No change in output. Intakes are clear, heaters aren't offline. But it's getting colder. Dr. Ward looked up sharply. You feel that too? Everyone feels that, Bishop said. What, did we bring the damn thing inside with us now? Ramirez shivered. Look at your arms, he said. I glanced down. Goosebumps crawled across my skin like insects. That's not just environmental, Ward murmured. The air shouldn't drop that fast unless something is absorbing heat. Like what? Bishop snapped. A ghost? We're in a metal can under the ocean, Doc. There's nowhere for it to go. Another sound joined the symphony of metal and machinery, a faint, irregular clicking, like something tapping lightly on distant pipes. It wasn't from above this time. It seemed to come from everywhere at once, traveling along the frame of the sub, echoing through bulkheads and ventilation ducts. Is that inside the hull? I asked. No breach indicators, I answered myself, eyes scanning the panel. Structural integrity. Normal. If something's inside, it didn't come through metal. Could be expansion and contraction from temp changes, offered the life support tech. Cold spots forming, metal shifting. He stopped because even he didn't believe it. The lights flickered again, but not uniformly. The main control room strips remained steady, but deeper in the ship. Down the corridors and into the compartments, there were brief, localized flashes. You could see them through open hatches, lights stuttering in odd rhythms, like someone was walking through the boat with a broken flashlight. Electrical anomaly, I said. We're getting uneven draw. Ellis's jaw tightened. Get me a status on all compartments. I want reports from every section chief in 60 seconds. If there's a real fault, we're not ignoring it." Reports crackled over the internal comms quickly, the way they do when people are more eager to talk than they admit. No breaches, no fires, no flooding, but everyone felt the temperature drop. Everyone heard the clicking, and in engineering they'd felt something else. Chief Dobbs down in propulsion sounded breathless, like he'd jogged to the mic. "We got a spike in magnetic interference about 2 minutes ago," he said. Instruments wigged out for about 5 seconds. Compass spun, and some of the coils screamed like they were under extra load. Then it went away. "'Cause?" Ellis asked. "Unknown," Dobbs admitted. "We're not drawing extra power, nothing shorted, but it felt like someone held a giant magnet over the whole aft section." Ward looked thoughtful in a way I didn't like. "Something with that kind of mass and presence," she said slowly, "might not interact with our systems the way a normal organism would. If it generates a strong enough field." She trailed off. "You're saying our friend doesn't need claws to do damage," Ramirez said. "It just needs to get close and we start tearing ourselves apart." "We don't know that," she said. "Yet. I wanted to." Ask her what exactly we did know, but the answer would have been short and useless. We were still climbing, but more slowly now. I'd scaled back the ascent rate to keep from overstressing the hull while we dealt with whatever this new phase was. The deep had layers. We'd escaped one problem only to rise into another. "Depth, 25,600, I reported, ascent continuing. Internal anomalies present, but non-critical. For now." The clicking in the hull grew louder. It wasn't rhythmic like the knocking before. This was more scattered, but it had a shape to it. Clusters of staccato taps, then silence, then another cluster somewhere else. It sounded like something moving along the outside again, but now the pattern shifted around us in 3 dimensions. Forward then aft, high then low, almost too fast to be a physical form. "Is that sonar crosstalk?" Bishop asked, desperate for a technical explanation. "We're not picking up our own pings weird, are we?" "No," Ramirez said firmly. "Sonar's clean. This is mechanical. I know what my instruments sound like. This isn't them." Ward hugged her arms around herself. "We shouldn't be hearing anything from outside this clearly," she said. "Not at this depth, not through this hull. Sound transmits well, but not like this. It's almost like it's focused. You're all hearing it, right?" Bishop said, looking around. "It's not just me." Everyone nodded. "Just making sure," he muttered. "Group hallucination is better than solo hallucination. Less paperwork when they lock us up." The clicking stopped. In its place, something else crept in, a low, distant vibration that wasn't quite sound and wasn't quite feeling, but something uncomfortably in between. It thrummed through the structure, a slow, deep pulse, like the echo of a massive heartbeat being transmitted through miles of water and metal. You didn't so much hear it as have it sit inside your chest, turning your own heart's rhythm unreliable by comparison. My throat went dry. "What is that?" I whispered. "Not ours," the life support tech said, swallowing. "Definitely not ours." Ramirez stared at his screen. "There it is," he said hoarsely. "Contact. Bearing 335. Range. Very close. It's back." "How close?" Ellis asked. Ramirez's hand trembled over the controls. "Too close for comfort," he said. "Far enough that Sonar can see it now. Close enough that if it decides to close the gap the rest of the way, we're going to feel it in our teeth." "Describe it," Ellis said. "Profile, shape, anything." The chief exhaled slowly. "It's not a shape our software understands," he said. "It's large, longer than we are, maybe wider. Signatures, messy. It's not streamlined like a whale or a shark. It's articulated, like it's made of multiple segments or limbs. It let go and then followed us," Ward said. "It's not random, it's assessing." "Can we outrun it?" Bishop asked. "At this depth," I said. "No. We push the engines too hard down here, we break something critical. We're already dancing with structural limits." The vibration slowly intensified, the phantom heartbeat growing more insistent. For a horrible moment, I had the irrational sense that whatever was out there was tuning to us, finding the resonant frequency of the hull, learning how to make the metal sing. "How deep are we now?" Ellis asked. 24,900, I said. "We've gained 4,000 feet. Keep us rising," he ordered. "But I want us ready for evasive maneuvers if that thing closes. Minimal, controlled. We're not smashing ourselves apart trying to dodge a creature we can't even see." "Sir," I said, "if it decides to ram again—" "We survived 2 hits already," he replied. "We'll survive another, until we don't. But I'll take a known risk over hitting crush depth because we panicked." He was right. It didn't make me feel better. The phantom heartbeat cut off mid-pulse. The absence was as shocking as the sound had been. 1 second, your bones vibrated. The next, everything went flat and empty. like stepping out of a room where loud music had been playing for hours. Then something slammed into the stern. The blast slammed through the sub from back to front. The deck lurched, lights flared, and a scream of tortured metal tore out of the engineering section over internal comms. Our ascent halted. Depth ticked downward a few feet before meters caught us. "Impact aft," I shouted. "Compartment Charlie 3, registering stress spike." "Engineering report," Ellis barked. Dobbs's voice came over the line ragged and loud. "We just took a hit on the screw housing," he yelled. "Something smacked the prop and we've got vibration in the shaft. No breach yet, but we're not spinning clean." I checked propulsion output. The readings jittered, a nasty oscillation that made my gut twist. "They're right," I said. "The prop's wobbling. We keep this up, we shear something." "Can we shut down?" Ellis asked. "Not if we want to keep climbing," I said. "We can throttle back to minimize stress, but if we kill the screw entirely, we're just a sinking stone with slightly better insulation." Another series of impacts shuddered through the aft section, lighter than the first, but more frequent. It felt like something was striking us in quick, exploratory blows, mapping our weakest points. "It's targeting propulsion," Ward whispered. "It's disabling our movement." "How the hell would it know what propulsion is?" Bishop snapped. "The same way we learned at Hunt's," she shot back. "Trial, error, pattern recognition. Intelligence doesn't have to be human to exist." The idea that we were fighting not just a beast, but something capable of learning settled over the control room like a new layer of pressure. "Options," Ellis said. "I want them fast." "We could vent decoy canisters," Bishop suggested quickly. "Not explosives, just noise and mass. If it's tracking us physically and acoustically, cluttering the water might confuse it." "At this depth, anything we throw out is going to behave weird," I said. "But it might distract it long enough for us to gain separation." "Do it," Ellis said. "Non-lethal decoys only. I don't want shockwaves near our hull. We're not tearing ourselves apart with our own gear." Bishop's fingers flew over his console. "Firing canisters," he said. There was a solid thunk somewhere in the bowels of the sub as metal containers shot out into the black, deploying payloads of compressed gas, chaff-like material, and sound-burst emitters. They were designed to confuse torpedoes and masking systems, not enormous unknown entities, but confusion was confusion. Ramirez watched his scope. "Multiple small contacts expanding aft," he said. "They're clouding the water. That thing is still there, but it's got a mess to sort out now." The next impact didn't come. For 10 long seconds, nothing struck us. The vibration in the shaft eased a fraction as the creature, if that's what it was, shifted attention. "Depth, 24,300, I reported. Ascent rate stabilizing. Prop vibration still present but manageable." "Keep climbing," Ellis said. "We get as far away from that trench floor as we can. I don't care if we have to crawl up the water column an inch at a time." I let out a slow breath, trying not to think about just how much ocean still sat above us. We weren't even halfway to the safe depth band. We were still in the dark zone, the kill zone, whatever you wanted to call the place where sunlight was a myth, and the only things that lived here had adapted to the kind of pressure that could turn a human body into mush in seconds. Behind us, in the murk, something massive moved among the sacrificial canisters we'd thrown away, like breadcrumbs. Ramirez tracked it, his brow furrowed. "It's slowing," he murmured. "Whatever it is, it's not just charging. It's checking the decoys. It's feeling them." "So the good news is it's not stupid," Bishop said. "The bad news is it's not stupid." Ward stared at the sonar like she could will it to show more. "It's not just following us," she said. "It's studying us. And if it's studying us, it's only a matter of time before it learns what hurts us most." I didn't say what we were all thinking. We had just survived our first round with something that wasn't supposed to exist. The second round was coming, and we were running out of tricks. The Kestrel climbed with a kind of wounded determination, groaning under the shifting pressure and shuddering as her overworked systems tried to maintain stability. Every vibration felt sharper now, every creak heavier with meaning, as though the submarine itself had begun to understand the threat that pursued us. The water outside was no longer just water. It had become a living, suffocating presence pressing against every inch of the hull, a darkness listening for signs of weakness. As we ascended, the creature behind us kept pace with a slow, intelligent patience that made my skin crawl. Ramirez watched the sonar screen so intensely that his face looked carved from stone, and each time the massive, unclassifiable shape swept through the decoy cloud behind us, I could see a faint tremor pass through him. The creature wasn't attacking us outright anymore. It was following us with the deliberate precision of a predator that had already learned our tricks. The deeper we rose, the more unnatural things became inside the submarine. The temperature began to fall in small, sharp drops that made the air feel unnervingly thin, the metal surfaces cold enough to sting when touched. The cold seeped in without explanation, slipping through the submarine's insulation like fingers made of ice. Even worse were the sounds, thin staccato clicks and faint pulses that danced along the hull in a pattern that felt almost purposeful. It wasn't the random cracking of shifting metal or the familiar songs of stressed steel. It was something more rhythmic, resonant, as if the creature were using the water as a medium to probe and understand us. Dr. Ward seemed to sense it too. She stood quietly, her head tilted slightly, counting under her breath as if translating, a language the rest of us didn't want to hear. Every few hundred feet, we encountered small disturbances, a sudden ripple in the sub's trim, a sluggish response from the ballast pumps, a faint judder through the keel like a massive hand brushing past us. None of it was enough to cause immediate damage, but all of it reinforced the same terrible truth. The creature was staying close. It wasn't confused by our maneuvers or deterred by the decoys. It was simply waiting for the right moment. That moment came at 22,000 feet. The submarine lurched with a subtle but unmistakable shift, a gentle roll that made every man in the control room reach for something to steady himself. It felt like someone had pushed the sub, not hard but deliberately, like a hand testing an object's balance. Before anyone could speak, another push came, stronger this time, enough to tilt the deck by half a degree. I felt the shift in my legs, the change in gravity, and the instinctive clench of muscle that followed. Impact, I said quietly. Port side. Light, but deliberate. Ramirez confirmed it with a grim nod. The creature was repositioning, moving closer, adjusting itself alongside us like a massive shadow drifting in the dark. I could feel its presence as a pressure, a tension in the air that had nothing to do with science or physics. Something was pacing us, just outside the hull, and it was preparing. The clicking inside the hull intensified briefly, then stopped just as suddenly. In the silence that followed, something else emerged, a deep resonant thrumming that vibrated through our bones. It reminded me of distant whale song, but distorted, inverted, and impossibly low. It filled the control room, buzzing through the metal panels and amplifying in our chests until my heart struggled to maintain. Its rhythm. No one spoke during those moments. No one had the breath or clarity to do so. It felt like a communication, or a warning, or something far stranger, an assertion of presence. Then Sonar screamed. The creature shot upward beneath us with terrifying speed. The first strike hit the starboard side with such force that the entire submarine nearly rolled. Equipment flew from shelves. Bishop was thrown into a bulkhead hard enough to draw blood. Sparks showered from two overhead panels as power relays overloaded. The lights flared white, then red, then died completely as the backup system struggled to route current. I was hurled against my console hard enough to bruise ribs. Pain flashed through my side, but fear overpowered it almost instantly. The second strike came from below, a heavy, bone-deep impact near the bow that made the metal groan like a creature in agony. Then a third at the sail. It wasn't random. It was methodical, surveying our structural seams, hunting for the point of maximum damage. The creature seemed to understand that brute force alone wouldn't crush us at this depth. Not yet, but targeted pressure might. And then it grabbed us. There is no comparison for that sensation. One moment the Kestrel was a machine moving under its own power. The next, it was a toy locked in the grip of something impossibly strong. A crushing, contorting pressure wrapped around the sub from starboard to bottom, bending metal plates inward, warping bulkheads, and sending sharp cracking noises echoing through the corridors. The hull groaned under the directional force in a way that made my blood run cold. Submarines are designed to withstand uniform pressure from all directions, not a monster's grip. We weren't just being attacked, we were being crushed. I fought to bring more power to the prop, forcing the engines to push against whatever held us, but the creature's strength was unreal. The screw spun, the engines howled, but the sub barely moved. The pressure around us tightened, and a shudder rippled through the keel like vertebrae grinding. The odds of the hull failing rose with every passing second. It was Ward who saved us. She shouted over the alarms that we needed to use the emergency sonar bursts, high-frequency pulses so violent they were meant only for last-resort navigation hazards. They could rupture eardrums at close range, crack brittle ceramics, and destabilize organisms with sensitive structures. They could also destabilize us, but it didn't matter. Ellis gave the order. When Ramirez fired the bursts, the submarine's entire spine vibrated like a struck bell. Pain lanced through my skull, sharp and instantaneous, as though needles had been driven into my ears. Bishop collapsed to his knees, clutching at his head. Ramirez gritted his teeth so tightly I thought they might crack. Ward stumbled sideways into a console. Even Ellis looked momentarily disoriented. But the burst worked. A deep, guttural roar, so loud it felt like a quake, echoed through the water. The crushing grip loosened. The hull expanded slightly. The groaning stopped. And then, suddenly, the creature let go. The upward thrust of our engines hurled us forward like a slingshot. The sub surged upward, propelled by both thrust and sudden freedom, rising faster than I would ever consider safe. But we had no choice. We fled. The creature recovered quickly. Within seconds, its massive form reappeared on sonar, spiraling upward through the water with sickening speed. It moved with a mixture of fury and precision, weaving between its own confusion signals and zeroing in on our rising trail. It chased us. We climbed. It climbed faster. "Thrust everything," Ellis ordered. "We don't stop for anything." We pushed the engine so hard the temperature gauges went past yellow toward red, the lines quivering dangerously. But the Kestrel surged upward, scraping through the pressure band with brutal momentum. Each foot we gained felt stolen. The submarine moaned and rumbled, like a living thing giving everything it had. But the creature was still gaining. When it rushed past the decoy cloud, sonar showed it moving with surgical precision, no longer confused, no longer distracted. It had learned, it adapted. Then it made its move. The attack came from above this time, striking the bow with such force that the entire sub folded inward by noticeable inches. I felt the floor buckle under my feet and heard the unmistakable sound of metal fracturing somewhere toward the forward storage lockers. Ward flew across the room again, hitting the wall with a cry. Sparks sprayed the deck as another console burst. The lights died again. We were blind, damaged, and the creature was curling around the sub for the final kill. Ellis had no time left to think. "Blow everything," he shouted. "Now hail everything." It was reckless. It was suicidal. It was our only hope. I hit the ballast override and flooded all tanks with compressed air in an instant. The submarine lurched upward so violently it threw everyone not strapped in straight to the deck. The pressure difference slammed into us, rattling the hull, rattling our teeth, rattling our organs. But we rocketed upward like a torpedo fired from hell. The creature tried to follow. It tried, and failed. As we rose into warmer, lower pressure waters, the creature began to slow. Its enormous form convulsed and distorted, its structure clearly not designed for rapid changes in depth. At 5,000 feet, it faltered. At 3,000, it thrashed helplessly. At 1,000, it sank back into the darkness like a dying god, slipping below us with reluctant grace, disappearing into the abyss it came from. The water above grew lighter. The hull eased. The pressure lessened. The creature was gone. But the silence it left behind was worse than its presence. We rose until the water around us was calm and blue-black, and only then did the control room begin to function again. Bishop wiped blood from his forehead with a trembling hand. Ramirez leaned back in his chair, exhausted beyond expression. Ward stared at nothing, her mind racing behind her wide, glassy eyes. Ellis stood with his hands on the rail, breathing hard, staring at the displays as though daring them to show the creature's return. Instead, sonar remained empty. "I don't think it wanted to kill us for sport," Ellis said quietly after a long time. "It wasn't attacking out of hunger. It was defending something." His words sank into the still air of the control room like stones. I asked him what he meant. He didn't turn around. He just kept staring into the black water behind us. "We went too deep," he said. "We went where humans weren't meant to go, and we came close to something that thing protects." I felt the dread of those words in my bones, a warning, a guardian, a territory we had trespassed. Ellis finally looked at me, his face pale but steady. "Tell me, Hale," he said softly. "What do you think we disturbed down there?" I didn't answer, because the truth was too large to fit into any words. Whatever it is still down there, waiting, watching, guarding the abyss.